So this is Baruch here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. Sorry, a little bit behind here. I wanted to point out something too. That we're learning here SHAAR HAGILGULIM. It's not an easy SHAAR for people who don't have some background in Sod. But each one of the SHAARim is put together. This is a book that's put together by the son of Rabbi Chaim Vital, called Rabbi Shmuel Vital. And as we're getting into it, he says the word Hakdama, which means introduction. So the whole book, even if I go back to the back, there are Hakdamos. There are many of them. This is Hakdama Aleph. So these are preliminary things that a person has to know and be able to understand that have to do with the subject of reincarnation, which is the idea of a cycle, of the soul recycling itself. But in the previous shiurim, we saw that it's not so simple to say the soul recycles itself. So now we're coming, because there are actually 5 different types of soul, which are related to 5 different types of lights of energy that come from the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, but are filtered down to us in this very, very dark place in which we live. So I'm going to try to go through this as best I can to explain the different ideas that he mentions over here. Now he says there are 5 different levels of the soul, and they're called, from the bottom to the top, they're called Nefesh, Ruach, and one is actually inside of the other, meaning that the most interior part is going to be the part that is closest to the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, and the more pure light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. So some of the light is so great that it has to surround us. It can only shine on us like the sun. But some of the light is inside of us, and it shines out. That's what we usually call neshama. So now we talked about these 5 different levels, and there's an acrostic for this in Kabbalah, and it's called Naranchi. I've heard Yaakov Cronenberg, Rabbi Yaakov, he says not right, Rabbi, okay. So Yaakov Cronenberg says that he pronounces it Narnachi, but I think that's his pronunciation. I haven't heard anybody else use that. He said, so now we explain the Naranchi. So I have to let you know, I have to give you some introductions here, more ideas. Be'inyan, Drush, and Nizgar, where we're talking about reincarnation. So let's talk about this. Inyan, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. And then the Matuk Medebash adds in V'chayiv Yechida and Chayin Yechida. And then there's another concept which we're going to talk about, which is the Chulukah de Rabbanan. So let's go back over this. These are 5 levels of light, which he says again, Nefesh, Ruach, V'neshama, Chayiv, Yechida. All of them are different names for the word soul in English. So we see the 5 different levels of this. Then there's something else which is called the garment of the rabbis. Shuhu Levush HaNeshama, which is actually a clothing for the aspect of Neshama. Now, the way that the rabbis or the Kabbalah understands these words, which we're going to go back to the word Naranchi, it is 3 different parts which actually enter into a human being. Those are called by the acrostic Naran, which is Neshama, Ruach, and Nefesh, or the other way around, going from the bottom to the top, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. Now, the Chaya and the Yechida, the rule on them is that they're too powerful. So even if the Chaya enters into the soul of a person, it has to come out, because it's just no room for it. So therefore it flies out. And Yechida is very far away, a tremendously powerful, powerful light. It's really analogized to the soul of, or the light of Eric Anpin, or of Kesser. But this is very far away, because, in other words, it's very deep inside, another way to say it. So he says, now when we get to the 4th SHAAR, I'm not sure which SHAAR he means over here. So he said from the 4th SHAAR, which of the 8 different SHAARim, the gates, that were put together, ordered by the Maharshu, rather it's Rabbi Shmuel Vital, who's SHAAR Pesukim, which is also called the SHAAR of Pesukim. The pasuk of mil, and there's a pasuk that says a mil cotton to asalo imo, and they made a small garment. His mother made him a small garment. Now, what does this mean? Shasham mavur shekadei lekabel bechinas ruach. So it says like this. Now, understand, he had said previously is that before you can receive the concept of ruach, this is a level of light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, one must also, previous to that, must be able to perfect the lowest part, which is the animal part, the part that keeps your heart beating and so on and so forth. That energy is called nefesh. So he says that before you can read the Kabel Bechinas Ruach, Tzarik Lihiyo Shalom Bebechinas Nefesh. So the concept of Nefesh has to be completed. So understand, this is way we're talking about what we call in English reincarnation, but here we're talking about levels of souls. So that is that this Nefesh also has in the Rantchi of its own min nukva the Siyah, and it comes from the nukva of a Siyah for the female essence, which is called Malchus. And also let me go back over this and start it again. In order to receive the Ruach, a person has to be complete in the Olam of Asiyah, which is the world in which we live in, the world of wheels, the world of action. He has to be able to be complete his whole nefesh, ruach, neshama, chayin, yechida, that comes from Olam Asiyah. So understand that in the worlds themselves, each one of them has a specific set of lights, which are the 5 lights that we've been talking about. We're calling it now Naranchi. And it has to be complete in that person in that lower world. That's in our world. And before you could move up to the next world, this has to be something that you've been able to sustain. So you have to get that all together too. And also from Bina. The Naranchi of Bina has to be complete. And the Naranchi of Chochmah. And the Naranchi of Kesser. Now, what's he saying? He says that each hidden world has within it a set of lights, and they're duplicates. And if you saw them side by side, then you understand they look the same, except that you were moving from the right to the left. Well, let's say, I guess it would be from the left to the right. And the most left-hand corner would be the Olam of Asiyah. Inside of it, it has the Naranchi. Then as you move closer to the center, you go to Ruach, and Ruach is going to have a Naranchi of its own. And then you're going to go, and one more, you're going to come to the Neshama. It has its old Naranchi, etc., etc. So when he has a complete Naranchi of a Siyah, then that's considered to be a Nefesh which is complete. So in the same way, it comes from these places from Olam Yitzira, Olam Bria, Olam Atzilus. So understand that there are four different hidden worlds. They correspond to the names Yud Ke Vav Ke, which is also 4 letters, where the final Yud, the final He, refers to the lowest world. And whereas the Yud itself, and even the tip of the Yud, at the very top of the Yud, represents higher worlds. So he said, Ba'ofen sheyesh kaf he bechinas ma'asiyah, there are 25 different aspects in Asiyah, then 25 different aspects of Yisiyah, that's an Naranchi of each, and the Naranchi of the Naranchi. Kaf He Mabria, Kaf He Matzilos, etc. So this is something we'll get into that. It's over there in SHAAR Pesukim. Now the last thing we're going to look at over here is another idea, is what is this concept of the Chalukah the Rabbanan? Over, I think he might have called it a mill. It's the same idea. So let me talk about the garment that is given to this neshama as it enters into a human being, that it has within it, and not just a human being, but enters into all of the worlds, because each of the worlds themselves has their own neshama. So the pattern is the same every place. So he says, the ha'halukah the Rabbanan, ki kamoshi yesh b'zer anpen gimel b'chinas iver yaniko mochim. Now that has to be explained. The development of the worlds also corresponds to the development in the womb of our mothers, physical human being mothers. And so they are for Ivor, which is what? Is when the mating of the parents produces a child in the womb of the mother. Then is Yanika, which is nursing, which is the child, the mother feeding the children, or the children, after they come out of her womb. And then finally is Mochin, when she pours into them the concept of Hashem Yisbarach, and that how it is that he is in every single aspect of reality. Kachal derek zech mamish. So in the same way, yesh ben neshamas b'nei adam, that in our neshamas, and then human neshamas, gimel bechinas iver yaniku mochin, we also have these 3 different aspects, which are embryonic, nursing, and then mochin, what we call mochin the godless. We call the mochin which make us aware of God, as I said before, the hainu. So beginning, when we're talking about the portion of the nukva, which is Malchus. And Malchus refers to Olam Asiyah, Shekolula b'chamesh partsufim, that has within it 5 partsufim, which are what? The parts of the nukva and the male, that's a Zachar v'nuk, that's Zer Anpin and Malchus. And then there's an Abba v'Ima, that's the Chochma and Bina. And then there's a Keser, which is on top, also known as Eric Anpin. So after these, he said that Dahainu b'dechida b'chedek anukva, the Siyah. So we're talking at the bottom, start at the bottom. Shekolula b'chamesh partsufim, she has 5 partsufim. So then in each one of these partsufim in Malchus, are in us. And then also the same thing, all of the world, not just the Siyah, but the world of Bria, the birth of Yitzira, and of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah. And then they say like this, that this same pattern is in all worlds. Cotton, and then there's a concept of this very small garment, who's sewed hamochin de katnas. This is the secret of mochin de katnas. Now I can explain there's 2 different things, mochin de gadlus and mochin de katnas. Mochin is so many different kinds of things, but we understand is brain matter. There's the brain matter of a child, which is that is the awareness of a child, and there's the awareness of an adult, which in this case means an adult is person who is aware of the fact that God is acting in his life in every single way. So he says this is called a mochza, when in this the stage which he had mentioned previously, which is called yanika, nursing, means that the child is born, but he doesn't have mochin de gadlus yet. He doesn't have a real awareness of how Hashem is in the world. So he said mochin de gadlus and nikra choluka de rabbanim, which is called the garment of the rabbis. So it comes into a person. He said, let me read again. There is a mill cotton, a small garment, which is the secret of the mochin de katnas. So he said, what does this mean? Mochin of the child. A nikra choluka de rabbanan, also another word for it is called the garment of the rabbis. V'zechach halavush, this is a covering. El haneshama, for the neshama. Shiham mochin de gadlus, which is mochin de gadlus. But before you can have gadlus, the concept is you have to have katnas. You have to be able to perfect this if you're going to go and understand reincarnation. This is Baruch Fleischman.